Ladies and gentlemen, it's Spoilerin time. And as Ken from Chicago on Twitter said today, Cordkillers is for news and Spoilerin time is for reviews. Spoilery reviews of the things we've been watching. At the end of the show, we'll be talking about Justified episode 2 of season 6. We'll also talk about The Leftovers second episode of season 3, the second episode of season 3 of Better Call Saul, and the first episode of season 3 of Fargo. Lots of season 3s, lots of episode 2s, lots of Tom Merritt. Lots of Brian Brushwood.
Heck yeah, too much, but most importantly, we have special guests.
Yes, joining us is Richard Gunther. You may have heard him on our previous episode of Cordkillers as well, editor at the Digital Media Zone and viewer of everything we're going to talk about except The Leftovers.
Yeah, but meanwhile, most importantly, not a participant in the summer movie draft.
Hey.
Why is that most important?
I mean, it's most important because, it got us to the next segment. Hey, Tom, do you feel like you're going to win the summer movie draft?
Feeling a lot better with $163 million in the bank, to be honest. Fate of the Furious is I feel like it's going to hit 200 million, which is what I needed it to do.
It will hit 200 million, but not a lot more, I don't think, right?
That's all right. I just need that and Wonder Woman. That's all I need.
Man, I'd hate to say it, but it's like, I don't want to say it out loud, but I don't think Wonder Woman will do very well. So I'll put it in a funny song, so I didn't really say it. I'm going.
I'm buying a ticket. That's one. You got one.
I mean, we're all going to go see it. In fact, my kids... when my daughter hurt her foot bicycling, I was trying to distract her. I was like, which are you more excited for, Guardians of the Galaxy or Thor Ragnarok? And she goes, Wonder Woman. Which is awesome.
And that is the ticket sales I will ride to victory upon, whether it's good or not. I got a call from a drunken Brit.
Oh, my God. You got the Brit call? He went on that... Whoever that
telling me that he had just come from a party.
He called me with the same story. He called Justin with the same story.
Yes. My God. He's like, and of course with me, it was like, oh, I'm so sorry, but Wonder Woman's going to be awful.
I mean, whoever this British person is, he sounds amazing and dapper and wonderful.
Yes, and he is one of my favorite people on planet Earth. But it did shake my faith a little bit. But Richard, you seem like you're super excited about it.
Well, you know what? I feel like that's one of those characters like, I feel the same way about Batman. I grew up with some of these characters, and seeing them come to life on the big screen, I think is pretty exciting. And, Wonder Woman, I might argue, single-handedly saved Batman versus Superman. So I'm not convinced that this is going to tank.
I am not convinced it's going to tank either, because I have to be.
I'm convinced that I hope, for sake of the movie draft, it is critically lauded and beloved by my family and makes no
one
money.
Else goes to see. Yeah, because we still have to get through The Circle coming out this week. I think last week I thought it was coming out on Friday, but it's coming out this week. That is Team Cordkillers, Christine Milango's second movie of the year after Life. And then we get to your juggernaut, Brian, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which the only negative of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is that you only have 2 other movies.
Yeah, but very rarely does a 3-movie strategy win the summer movie draft.
I mean, Guardians is getting such good early press. Maybe it's the one that helps you buck the trend.
Okay, so in my mind, I wanted it to be lower, slightly less than numbers than, an Avengers or a Civil War or something like that. It is almost certainly going to do better than the first Guardians of the Galaxy, which did 333 domestic. Right now, Hollywood Stock Exchange has it projected at 372. It has to outperform even that. If it's not over 400, Justin and I are in some serious trouble.
All right. Well, we are here to spoil some television shows. So let's start off with Fargo, episode 1 of season 3. Richard and I have watched it all the way through. Brian, I know you haven't finished episode 1 entirely.
No, I've barely begun it. In fact, to be honest, I really only watched that opening scene where it's all in German, takes place in East Germany. This whole, it was exquisitely acted, exquisitely directed. It was haunting and awful. Also kind of a ridiculous premise that basically they pull in a guy who's like, hey, you're a 20-year-old who strangled his girlfriend. He's like, no, I'm a married 40-year-old. And he's like, well, what do you call him, the state of liar?
Hold, let me just stop you right there. I forgot that was even in this episode.
I know.
Yeah, exactly. Don't get hung up on that, Brian.
I'm not hung up on it. But it's like, it's a great example of during the moment, I was totally under its spell and I was goosebumps. But then the moment I walked away for a bit, I'm like, that seems unlikely that a bureaucrat
you did it wrong. You were not supposed to walk away.
Yeah.
You were supposed to be under its spell, which I remember being under its spell too, and then absolutely forget that it happened.
Right.
Exactly.
Because the rest of the episode is seeing Ewan McGregor play what seems like 15 different people, even though it's only 2.
And do it very well.
So talk me through it. What should I look for as I go through watching this episode?
Yeah, this is feeling like it's got a good premise set up. You're introduced into the mystery right off. You have an off-screen bad guy that is compelling by its absence until one of its representatives arrives. And maybe in a way this is reminiscent of that early conversation, because the richer of the Ewan McGregor brothers is a little bit talking across purposes to this guy. And essentially what happened is they took an investment from someone because they couldn't get one from a bank, and they're ready to pay it back, but the investor doesn't want it back. They instead want to launder money through this corporation.
And the corporation finds itself in the awkward position of having
like,
to
no,
try
we
to
don't
say
want to
no.
be a part of a criminal enterprise. They're like, man, you shouldn't have taken our money then.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't really have a choice. Where did you think this money was coming from?
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
As all good Fargo stories, it sounds like stuff is precariously balanced and then spirals downhill.
Yeah. And then the other Ewan McGregor brother, there's a beef between the two Ewan McGregors over a stamp. Apparently, the richer one, when their father died, got a Corvette, and the poorer one got a stamp, and they engineered a trade. And of course, now the poorer guy still drives that same like broken down Corvette, and the other guy sold most of the stamps to build his fortune. And so the poorer brother hires a parolee because he's a probation officer. He's also dating one of his parolees. He hires a parolee to steal the stamp, but in great Fargo fashion, the parolee loses the address and tries to do it from memory and accidentally robs the wrong person and kills someone's grandpa.
Ooh, that sounds an awful lot like Fargo. I'll bet there are hammers and claws and brains and blood.
No, not really, actually.
Oh, yeah?
This is more about the terror, because they show you a great scene with Carrie Coon, who plays Nora on The Leftovers. She's a law enforcement officer. They show her making dinner for her grandpa. Her grandpa's kind of crotchety and old and angry. And so you build some investment in that family, and the horror of his murder comes from their reaction to it when she discovers it.
Awesome. Dude, Richard, you've watched the previous seasons. How does this first episode compare?
I was in. I loved it. I think they did a great job. I have no clue what that first scene was all about. Presumably, we're going to get it at some point. But, and to be honest, this is so me, but I was so distracted in that first scene by the shadow that the snow was making, which was just ridiculous because I can't imagine snow actually causing a shadow through light coming into a window. And that actually kind of ruined that scene for me. But then going into the story that they set up, Ewan McGregor totally buying it as the two characters. In fact, I don't know that I would have known that it was the same actor if I didn't know the actor.
And they're both Minnesota accents. So I'm curious, Brian, because sometimes I know that throws you off. It sounds unbelievable. I'm curious how well he does for you there.
I'll be curious too, because watching The Leftovers, not a spoiler. Christopher Eccleston's Midwest accent is a little hard for me to swallow.
It goes in and out, and it ranges around. And if I were doing a British accent, I'm sure it'd be the same problem.
Correct. Yeah. Well, I don't see what the big deal is, Tom.
I have hard R's now because I'm from the Midwest.
If you over-enunciate your R's, you're Midwestern.
It's actually a really good impression of Christopher Eccleston's American accent that you're doing right now. It's pretty great. But yes, anyway, Fargo, in my opinion, off to a brilliant start. Let's move along to Better Call Saul, episode 2 of season 3, where I know I'm jumping right to the end here, but we find out the trap. The trap wasn't legal. The trap was to get Saul or Jimmy so mad that he would do something else that they could threaten him with legal action over and have witnesses for.
Yeah. Well, guess what? I don't know how mad Jimmy is. I know how mad I was finishing that episode. I watched that episode right as it premiered. We finished up Cordkillers. I watched it. Bonnie said she was out on Better Call Saul. And so I'm like, well, I'll watch it myself. And I finished it, and I was raging. I had a hard time going to sleep with balled fists. And the beautiful part about the way Michael McKean plays that character is I almost would have preferred it if he gave me a snide Tom Hiddleston smirk or something like, yeah, I got you. But instead, he's got that punchable fake facade of, well, I'm just doing what's right for, it's responsible. We're officers for the court. No, you're a selfish prick, and you deserve my fist in your face, Michael McKean. I don't care how good you are in Spinal Tap.
I have Brian's threats on tape right here. I can now use them in court against him.
I'm a witness.
Yeah. But dialing back from it, of course, it's clear that playing it in front of Ernesto was all part of the plan, and that he was doing, and by the way, maybe it runs in the family, running that scamster's blood, playing the long con. I thought it was great. And in fact, I liked it so much that Bonnie, who said she was out, I was like, well, you should see a little part of it. And it's like, I skipped, basically the trick is to skip straight to Mike Ehrmantraut. And then after that, it's hypnotic. Everything he does is great. And then, I did think, I don't know. I didn't get a lot out of the Pollos Hermanos scene outside of seeing, Jimmy, crudely execute PI shenanigans.
Yeah.
Outside of but it's Gus. Like, if I hadn't seen Breaking Bad, that would all seem like an odd, slow, clumsy scene.
Exactly, because the tension is Gus going to do something? Is the guy going to hand something to Gus? Richard, how did you feel about that whole sequence?
I actually liked the fact that they didn't make a big deal out of it, that it was just this weird thing, and you were wondering, well, what exactly is going on? He's obviously going to be found out. He's kind of acting like an idiot. But it was in this setting that if you are familiar with Los Pollos Hermanos and you know what it is and you know who he is, you know who Gus is, it means a lot more to you that that's where it took place. So it could have been anywhere, but they're obviously just setting the stage.
I don't know. I felt zero tension because I know they essentially work together, and same thing with I thought the first season, Mike and Saul hate each other, button heads things was cute because it was going to work out. But on the flip side, I felt no actual danger or tension from any of that. Although I say that, and yet even though I know Better Call Saul, Saul Goodman gets his own practice and in some way remains a lawyer and one-ups his brother, that in no way kept me from experiencing white, hot, bubbling, simmering rage for the way he got played.
Yeah, good point.
We also, by the way, call out to Fargo. This is not a spoiler for Fargo, but one of the investors mentioned in Fargo is a Mr. Ehrmantraut.
No way.
And I'm wondering
That's got to be just random.
Got to be an homage. It's something that if you don't watch Better Call Saul, you don't get at all. It's just a name, right? But yeah, back to Better Call Saul. I think the only other plot line really is the hiring of the receptionist, who Jimmy just wants to hire because he wants to kind of get it over with, and she seems fine. And turns out that she is pretty capable.
No, I loved it. And I don't even think it was I don't even think it was a case of him showing that he's lazy and unwilling to vet people properly. I think that I saw two people, one of whom was a lawyer first, trying to be an entrepreneur. And I think I saw an entrepreneur being a lawyer. And the entrepreneur is like, we have opportunity. We need to go. She's innocent until proven guilty. Throw her on the phones. And,
no, that's exactly what I'm saying. It wasn't that he was lazy. He was like, yeah, she seems fine. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this, right?
Right. If she's not good, we'll fire her out. Whatever. And I love the fact that her second call is clearly Mike when she tries to be folksy talking about the Cracker Barrel and all that stuff, and he's just not having it at all.
Overall, a fairly simple Better Call Saul. Not a ton of different scenes and plot lines going on because we spent so much time in Los Pollos Hermanos. And what did we get out of that other than we don't know what the guy did?
I don't know. I was fairly dissatisfied with it.
Right.
The first episode, it was really satisfying to have him find the tracer and all that stuff. That was a good detective story. This one was largely like, yellow shirt.
Am I forgetting something?
No.
Well, at the end of that whole sequence, you see Gus outside and he's cleaning up. And
he notices Mike.
It's not like he does anything significant, but I think if you didn't know him, you would recognize that they're kind of Chekhov's gunning him and that he will be someone who wasn't just a random conversation.
Yes. Dostoevsky's Fring, as they call it. All right. Let's move along to The Leftovers, episode 2 of season 3. And this is
it's Nora's
Nora episode that starts with the theme from Perfect Strangers, which I loved already. Like, oh, that's kind of funny and weird. And then Mark Lynn Baker, who played Cousin Larry, is in the episode as Mark Lynn Baker. And a subplot is that Mark Lynn Baker is mad because Balky and Jennifer and Marianne were all taken. Well, and he wasn't.
Can I confess something? I didn't recognize, all I recognized it as the opening theme music being horrible in 80s, and I wanted to ask you what's up. But now that you mention it, of course it's the Perfect Strangers thing. Because you know what's funny is I did recognize the orchestral version, the instrumental version, the pretty version of Perfect Strangers they played as she drove all the way out to Kentucky to show us what happened to Lily. That's hilarious.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I didn't recognize it straight off, but I'm like, oh, I know this. This is not made up for this. I know this is from something. And I just looked up the lyrics real fast. And I'm like, Perfect Strangers. So then when they brought up Mark Lynn Baker later, I was like, oh, that's just clever.
Isn't it? Yeah. And I thought he did a fine job playing himself. And in fact, does Mark Lynn Baker actually have 2 degrees from Yale? Like that?
No.
That random
I meant to look that up.
Brag
actually
was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he does.
Okay.
Richard, what did you make of this episode?
Well, that would assume that I got past season 1.
Oh, no! You didn't.
No, and I do want to go back because I've heard you talk about season 2, and I know that it not necessarily resets, but it tells a different story, and so I'm willing to give it a try. But by the end of season 1, I was so frustrated and angry, I just couldn't stick with it. And for the record, I'm one of the people that loved Lost. So it's not about just not knowing. It's about it being so dark and just no hope. And I just had a hard time dealing with that every single time. There was no hope for these characters.
Man,
and I just couldn't follow through on it.
It's almost as though they should have had a whole second season about a place where nobody got taken by the departure, and that maybe everyone had hope and they all came together in
Because I'm
unique
with
and
you, Richard.
interesting ways.
Season 1 was a bit hard. Season 2 made
Yeah.
it all worthwhile, and so far this season 3 is satisfying. I want to get to Nora because that's what this episode's all about. But real quickly, Mark Lynn Baker has a bachelor's degree from Yale and a Master of Fine Arts in Drama from Yale.
That's amazing.
Nice.
That's great. Can I say that vignette, that the cast story, some of the best storytelling I've seen this year. Like just as far as the quirkiness of the story, she didn't even know to call it the Wu-Tang Clan. She says it's the Wu-Tang
Oh, the cast on
Band.
her arm and why she did that. Yeah.
Like
The
you
Wu-Tang Band.
You get the pieces that she broke her own arm and then ran into the hospital to get a cast to cover it up. And what she was covering up was another cover up of a tattoo of the Wu-Tang Clan. And what she was really covering up is her fear of being a victim for the rest of her life. Oh God. And her walking in on Kevin with the bag on his head was so awkward, and he was so like that is his darkest, secretest shame, and he gets half sentences out about it, and she's like, it's fine. Like, that was the weirdest, awesomest thing, and I don't know, it really landed with me.
Well, and I love that. I love the outcome of that scene of, well, I have to go to Australia, which should by all rights be a I'm running away from you moment. But he just was like, can I come with you?
Yes.
And she's like almost like, oh, I'm so glad. Yes, please do.
Yeah. Well, and never mind, setting aside the dark implication that there's a good chance that she knows that she may be buying into paying $20,000 for the privilege of being burned alive and killed by radiation.
Oh yeah, there's a very complex situation going on there where a very important part of her wants to believe that this process could actually work and she could see her children again. And she is using the rest of her rational mind to justify exploring it as far as possible under the cover of investigating it and exposing it. And we've seen these two Noras this year, the strong Nora, who just comes out brash like, okay, here's the briefing. If they need a lawyer, you call him. If they say departure, you call me. And then we also see the Nora that needed to break her arm to cover up the cover up when she goes to Kentucky to see Lily.
And not for nothing, and I know it doesn't matter, Nora's just as sad and has it just as hard either way, but there was a part of me that definitely was like, I'm so glad Lily's okay. I mean, yes, Nora has every reason to be brokenhearted about how it shook out, but I'm so happy that that little girl is just fine, which is so
I
weird.
didn't seem very happy about that shovel being taken, but other than that, yeah.
Well, and that's a testament to this story. This is a character-driven story. Like, these are real people to me in a way that many television shows, that's not the case. Speaking of real people, so are we revising our interpretation of the last scene of the first episode, given that because that was the same chick that we saw from the end of the first episode that we all thought was old Nora?
Oh, no, it wasn't.
It's not? It
No,
looks
it's
like
not
the
the same
same
person.
chick. It's a different chick?
Mm-hmm.
She gave her name, Clementine.
Well, I know, but in the first episode, it looks like the same chick to me. And in the first episode, it wasn't like she turned and said, "I'm Nora." You know, it did not.
No, the first episode, it was Carrie Coon.
Okay.
As an older lady.
All right.
And this episode, it was older ladies on horses.
One of
just
whom
like-
looked an awful lot like her, but that's okay.
And, and they've got a style. Yeah.
Well,
So
Old
the
ladies on
implication is
Nora-
that Carrie Coon or that Nora ends up joining that posse.
Okay. All right.
And Nora probably would kill the right Kevin.
Well, okay. Well, also, she wouldn't call herself by a different name than Nora. My point is that my point is not. I am not questioning why Nora is calling herself a different person. I'm questioning whether or not the old lady we saw at the end of the first episode was Nora. Because again, there was nothing in that vignette to indicate that was Nora. Outside of, I recognize that's an old version of a character I know. Which if you asked me, the chick who was talking today also looked like old Nora. They all look looked like old Nora to me.
Look, I get it. All old women look alike to Brian.
And so I am quicker to believe that I would be wrong in believing that was old Nora in the last episode than I would be to assume that.
But where's
that they just
Nora headed right now? As of this episode, Australia.
Correct, but then they show a chick.
I'm pretty sure that's a flash forward.
Okay, right, but maybe it'd be great if they give literally any indication whatsoever that it's a flash forward, like literally a clock or a calendar. And I said,
"Oh, that's Nora, but she's older. This must be a flash forward." That was all I needed.
We need spinning newspapers
with
the date.
God damn it. No. Look.
We need the 24 clock to spin forward.
Swear to God. Swear.
All right. Anyone who can provide incontrovertible evidence of who that was at the end of episode 1, send it to cordkillers@gmail.com. Anything else before we move along?
Screw you guys.
Let's move on to Justified episode 2 of season 6. Man, this is just a whole lot easier to keep track of what's going on.
Three pieces of the puzzle now. Raylan, Boyd, and Ava in the middle. And this story is all about Ava's abject terror about her horrific position that she's in. And she is rising to the occasion like you would not believe. And I love the simplification. It's like a great deluge departed all of the uninteresting storylines and reduced us to only 3 characters.
Yeah, Richard, you've been watching this along with us, and you're caught up. And you mentioned on Cordkillers you felt the same way, where season 6 is already justifying your keeping with it.
Oh, you really did that? Yeah, I feel like you did last season. I felt like last season there was so much going on, and despite all of the interweaving storylines, it just wasn't interesting. I'm frankly really glad we've seen the last of the Crows. At least I hope we have. And at this point, it's now back to Boyd, and I think this is the cat and mouse game that these two are so good at playing. I'm really looking forward to the season. And I think this episode did a good job of kind of reestablishing that game.
We needed a murder of crows, literally.
I think isn't that literally the episode 1 title of season 5?
Yeah, it is.
I'm gonna no points for that one, Tom. I'm sorry.
No, I think you're right. I forgot that was actually the title of the episode.
Yeah, dude. The simplification helps out a lot. I am liking the deductive logic. Did we see Sam Elliott before this? Was that a surprise? Sam Elliott?
I don't think so. I was trying to remember that too. I'm like, has he been in a previous season? But I don't think he has.
Yeah. Loved seeing that little vignette with him and Mary Steenburgen. I totally buy that the two of them would bang and then do dope together. And
I totally buy that Sam Elliott would be this lovely, relaxing, peaceable guy who would really kill somebody if they crossed him.
And jab out both his eyes and so on.
That'd be a start.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was interesting because, this is one of those frustrating tropes that doesn't sit well with me in movies and in television shows, where she unfairly thinks Boyd is cheating her. Like, she was totally wrong when she got that in her head. Then, so she starts sowing the seeds of doubt and planning revenge and planning to get him. And then later, she turns out to be right. So it's like she's right for the wrong reasons. And it's like that, for some reason, that always drives me nuts. And I don't know why.
Well, it was a weird way to get there. I agree. But I think we've landed with a much stronger Ava Crowder character, because now it's believable when she takes the ledger to Raylan and is like, all right, you wanted stuff here. He left this. Yeah, I found it. And then has the presence of mind when she finds Boyd and it's sitting on her truck to just tell Boyd, I found your ledger.
Yep. Well,
and it's sitting in the truck.
And to spin the story appropriately, that was amazing. Like, she pulls up and she knows she's screwed. Whereas just like, I have to own this and own it in a way that makes sense to him. And then her make good, where she now, did she use insider information with Raylan to come and share stuff? Oh, you know what? I think that's what they implied, because because Raylan told Boyd that it was the real estate guy that tipped them off to the ledger. So Boyd gives it to Raylan. Then Raylan clearly has his team look over it and figure something out, and then they feed that to Ava. So Ava claims that she looked over the ledger before discovering Pizza Palace, and so thereby identifying who the muscle is that they're really dealing with. All of this, like, I like the fact that there's a finite number of pieces and I can follow all of their machinations. It's very, very satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't even get the whole thing with Pizza Palace until that last scene. And I'm like, oh, that's the bank.
Yeah, the one with
used to be a bank, said guy from Mindy Project.
Yeah.
Said guy that was the Terminator on Sarah Connor
Chronicles, yeah.
It's complex enough that I don't feel like it's simplistic, but it doesn't have these little tendrils that are just kind of leading off
to nowhere,
into seemingly nowhere, and that end up leading off into nowhere. So I love that I don't know what side Ava is going to land on, and I'm not sure Ava knows at this time what side she's going to land on. She is just playing both ends against the middle, hoping to see which way she should jump.
Yeah. Well, regardless, as people are saying in the comments, this is the season that has that Shield-like quality that we've been waiting for, and I'm glad we're here.
Well, I am glad that Richard Gunther was here with us again today. Richard, thanks again. Remind folks where they can find what you're doing online.
Absolutely. At the Digital Media Zone, I host 2 shows, Entertainment 2.0 and Home On. And you can find those in all of the usual places, iTunes, Google Play, and the like.
Thanks to everybody else for hanging around with us and talking shows. We will spoil you next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.